was actually born and raised in El Salvador. I lived there until I was 16 years old.
I was born and raised in East LA until my teenage years, and I went from LA out to Fontana.
My entire life I've lived in Ontario. So at home, my parents spoke both. My dad had just come from Mexico, so he only knew Spanish, so that's what he would communicate with me and my mom spoke all of the English.
I guess for me, Spanish was my first language because my parents only spoke Spanish. In fact, my dad passed away at 70 years old, and he spoke very little English. It was very deep accent, so it was very hard to understand what he was actually saying whenever he spoke in English. But my mom, to this day, she's 80 years old, and still does not speak English. She says she understands it, and the reason why she never learned English when she moved here from Mexico is because everybody in LA spoke Spanish.
True.
So she didn't feel there's really a need to learn English, and aside from that, she had 12 kids, 12 kids that she can take with her and translate for her. But my first language was definitely Spanish, and by the time I got to kindergarten, I already spoke both.
So for me, well, I was born and raised in El Salvador, so Spanish was my first language. In El Salvador, everybody has to learn English, but it's not real English, right? Because we don't practice it, so we kind of learn how to spell the words, but that's just about it. So when my dad picked me up from the airport, when we got here, the first thing he asked was like, "Did you learn English?" I was like, I'm looking around, I'm like, I don't think so. I remember when I was an EL student, I actually went to adult school because I really wanted to be at the same level as my other peers. So I was taking my regular EL classes in the morning as a sophomore, and then I was going to adult school at night so I could catch up. And so I remember my adult school EL teacher, he told me, when you start dreaming in English, then you know you made it. Because he was very encouraging, right? And so I would try, but I'm always dreaming in Spanish. It's like, when is that gonna happen? And I remember I was probably at level 3, it's 6 levels for EL. I was probably at level 3, and I had this dream, and I was watching a show, and the show was in English. So when I woke up, I was so excited. I was like, I got it, I made it, I finally made it. It's interesting, I think I dream in both, so I'm actually bilingual in my dreams. That's pretty awesome, right?
No, my dreams are in English. I don't think I've ever dreamt in Spanish. Maybe as a kid, but I don't recall.
You didn't dream about La Chancla or something?
No, the sandal. That doesn't have the same sound as La.
Well, when I was little, my mom would tell me, "Calladita te ves más bonita." So that's because that means you have to say the least, right? So you don't get in trouble. Or not gossip, actually. Camarón que se duerme se lo lleva la corriente. That means don't be lazy, or the river's gonna take the shrimp. So it doesn't really translate well.
Right? Yeah, it's a lot more like
but
that.
yes.
Just yesterday, actually, we had a conversation in the office. Somebody asked me, how do you say hot dog in Spanish? And I had to think about it. And I said, I don't know. Because the direct translation of hot dog is perro caliente. But is that how you order a hot dog in Spanish? Quiero un perro caliente?
Sí.
It just sounds weird when you say it in Spanish.
It does, yeah.
But in English, you don't think twice. It's hot dog. It's a dog, and it happens to be hot. But in Spanish, it just sounds weird to say un perro caliente.
But it is un perro caliente.
And I learned that's exactly how you say it.
That's exactly how you say
So I'm
it.
still learning Spanish to this day.
Yeah,
exactly. Something we ate a lot when I was a kid growing up, and even now as an adult, with my own boys in my family. But growing up, we always ate eggs with tortillas. We never used forks, we never used spoons. You would get your tortilla, you break a little piece, you grab your egg, and you eat it. And that was so normal for me. It's like, yeah, everybody eats it like that. So I always thought it was weird on TV when people would eat eggs with forks. That's weird. Then, when I moved from LA, where everybody ate their eggs with tortillas, moved to Fontana at that time, and spending the nights with different friends, and I was like, where are the tortillas? It's like, for what? It's like, for the eggs. He's like, oh, you use your fork. I was like, what do you use your fork? That's weird. So I just thought it was weird to use a utensil to eat your eggs, because my entire life growing up, you would eat your eggs with a tortilla. Like, there was no other way to eat it. So I just thought that was an interesting piece, because it was so normal for me growing up And so, not normal seeing other families using forks and spoons to eat their eggs.
Well, for me, I think my whole coming here was a complete shock, right? Because I had to start from zero. But one of the interesting things was that in El Salvador, when you're a teenager, you're pretty much an adult already. So when I was there, I was already on my second year of my bachelor's degree in business administration. And I come here and I have to go to high school as a sophomore. So I felt more mature than the other kids. And it was pretty shocking of how much they depended on their teachers and their parents. And Latinos, we're very family oriented, but at the same time, like, you grow up much faster, and I think it's because the need of you have to go to the workforce and also help your family, right? Where here is more about, we're a little bit more selfish. It's more about me and what I like and what I want sometimes, right? So that was pretty shocking to me because I was like, oh, I have to go back and be a teenager. And how do you do that? Because I was thinking I'm almost done, I'm almost done with school and I'm about to work. So that was pretty shocking. But maybe the language does take the number one spot for me because it was pretty shocking to have to learn all these words and how to spell it and how to put sentences. So what happened to me in school was that I was great at math. I aced all my classes, even though I didn't understand the language.
Interesting.
Because I knew numbers, and I was way beyond algebra and geometry, right? So I didn't need the teacher to really explain. I would just see the problems on the board, and I could easily solve them, even though I didn't understand what the teacher was saying. But then I had problems in government, the classes that you have to take as a senior because, I was mostly literature, probably because they expect you to write these perfect grammatically sentences, right? And so that was a little hard for me. So it was, even for college, was a little shocking. So even though I was an EL student, I was still doing good in my grades. But when I got to college, oh my gosh, my writing was not up the part, So I got my first C, and that was shocking to me. But now I get it. Now that I've been here longer, and now I understand more of grammar and how to, structure sentences and all that. Now I see, I was probably writing at an elementary level back in college, so I see why. But so the language would be number one for me as a culture shock.
I think my culture shock was reversed. So like my family, the first time they took me to Mexico as a kid, there was no running water, and so we would have to go out to the river and we would take our bath there and we'd come back, and then there was no restroom because there was no plumbing, so we had to make sure that if we used the restroom, it was nowhere near my abuelito's cornfield because he's growing that stuff, right? So those pieces were like fascinating to me. Or even something as simple as we'd go to my tío's little tiendita and we'd get a soda, and they would give it to us in the baggie, and we'd have to return the glass bottle. And I remember thinking it was so cool that we're not using a cup, we're using a little Ziploc bag with a straw in it and just drinking our soda. And just like lifestyle like that was so different. And then we'd come home and I'm like, wow, we have like glass cups, or we have running water whenever we want it, or like those simple things made me come back and just always appreciate how accessible everything was for us, and it helps to keep you humble and grounded because there are people so far away that we don't even know that don't have that luxury, right? Everything for us is such a privilege. So it was always really neat to watch and see the hard labor and what they did, and how for us it would just end up on our table, and yet behind that was someone's hard work and labor and love in getting it. So that was another reason I wanted my kids to be able to experience that, because you don't know what you don't have until it's not there, right?
So I had this really great teacher for my ESL 1 class. The way he would teach us, because there was a bunch of us, right, in the class, and the way he would teach us was that he was very graphic and very, like, he would bring a box and he would put the box in front of us, and he was trying to teach us inside and outside, over, on top, underneath, below. So he was trying to use those words. So he would put them on the board, and then he would use the box, and then he would point at the board, and then he will show us the signs of what he was doing. And having these props in the class were a very good thing for us because we were very visual. We could understand what he was saying, what he was doing, and it helped us a lot. I remember someone telling me, well, if you really want to learn it really fast, make sure you watch TV in English, shows in English. So I think that if we could incorporate that in our classrooms where our kids are watching something in English, and I know that in Spanish they do it because now my daughter is a sophomore and she is in Spanish, a Spanish student, and they watch a telenovela every day, and that's how they're capturing their Spanish. And it's true, if you watch certain shows in the language that you're learning, it makes it faster because something, your brain is connected to, your eyes, so the visual part becomes very alive in you. You understand it, and then you're practicing it as well because your ear, you have to really pay close attention to what they're saying. If we could incorporate that at our elementary level for our EL students, I think it would be amazing.
I remember a student from my previous district, high school student, came from, I believe it was Colombia. He was 10th, 11th grade, so around 16 years old, and didn't speak a word of English. The way he taught himself, he got reclassified in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
And the way it happened is he watched a lot of YouTube channels. So he watched a lot of YouTube with the subtitles, and he watched a lot of TV with the subtitles. Spanish or English videos with Spanish subtitles, and he taught himself that was his, I think 90% of his English came from watching those videos. And then of course the rest came from interacting and having conversations, but he would just watch video after video after video in English and just reading along with the subtitles, and he's just making that connection.
I think that's why we tell our DLI families, it's okay if you don't speak Spanish at home because everything else around you will, and they're immersed in it all day long at school. I know I do it for my daughter. Her cartoons are all in Spanish, right? Any TV shows she watches. And you're right, even though she's probably seen it in English, she has to pay extra attention now because she's watching this plot develop, but she has to listen for the words to really remember what's going on.
Knowing two languages is actually very valuable. It's really important. Keeping our traditions and our culture is actually something that you should be proud of because it makes you who you are. And Hispanics are such hardworking people. Like you were mentioning before, the stories of how people, it's a labor of love what they do over there. Life lesson for anybody, I want to tell them, no, don't ever feel bad because you have an accent. That's who you are, and it's actually a beautiful thing. Be proud of where you come from, whatever culture that is, and embrace those traditions because that's something so valuable that you can carry on to the next generations.
You don't have to be perfect. It's okay to make mistakes. And whether it's a small mistake or a very big mistake that impacts a lot of people, it's okay to make those mistakes as long as we learn from them and move forward. In my opinion, one of the biggest characteristics that a person can have, whether it's a child, a teenager, an adult, is resilience. Because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's going to trip up every now and then. And it's the people who get up, dust themselves off, sacúdate, right? And then keep going. I think that's a very important one.
Pa'lante, pa'lante.
Exactly.
I think something you brought up earlier, Tony, is super powerful and that it's never too late. And I think about my dad all the time. He came from Mexico when he was older, spent one day in Azusa High School and was like, I'm not going to make it here. And so he went into the workforce, worked for Sunkist Growers, and that's where he learned his English. When I was in college and high school, my dad would tell me, sit down and show me, teach me, you be my teacher and show me how to learn English. I'm so desperate to want to know. And he never felt like it was too late for him, and I think people should always remember that despite kind of like what you said, the challenges that we face or the things that we have to overcome, there's always still that glimmer of hope, that opportunity to be able to reach for what we want or learn that language or pursue that career that we're looking for and find those people you can connect with that bring out the very best in you, will support you. Put yourself out there sometimes, take those risks. And Jeanette, you proved that when you came when you were 16, right? Very similar. So I think in general, it's just never too late. Never too late.
Dream big.
Dream big.